Okay, so now comes d4, and you can see white grabs the center, and now he is threatening d5. So to stop that, Carlsen played e6. Now black can go for bishop to b4, and later on he might think about pushing d5 himself. Okay, so to stop this, here white goes for a3 so that he can, stop the move. Okay, so as you can see here, basically he goes for e3, and in the next move, you can see he's going to play bishop to d3. So basically now Carlsen continues with d6 so that he can develop the knight to d7. And now comes bishop to d3. And now he is asking for bishop exchange. And if they trade, white can bring his queen to d3, which will be good for him. So that's why Carlsen decides to bring his bishop back to b7, which is a good idea because it also creates some pressure over the king's side. Okay, so now queen to c2. And now a lot of you might be confused by this move because earlier the queen on d1 was defending the knight on f3. And usually we don't like messing up our kingside pawns. So what's the idea behind ruining the kingside structure? Well, Carlsen instantly captures on f3 with bishop takes f3, and white recaptures with the g pawn. And you can see white structure is now completely destroyed. But basically, even with that, black cannot really attack the white king. Yes, I mean, let's say if black gives a check by queen to g5, which looks obvious, but simply king to h1. And now this, f3 pawn is undefended, so black will obviously attack with queen to h5. But then white will simply play bishop to e4. And let's say black, moves his rook to a7. Now white can push f4. And now just look at the structure of white. It's like he created a tsunami that's coming forward and will, engulf the black pieces. If black tries to attack the bishop with knight to f6, white, can just go for bishop to g2. And now you can see this king is safe, protected by the bishop and the rook pair. And yeah, that's all. Okay, so in the actual game, after g takes f3, here Carlsen plays f5, and basically this cuts the diagonal of this bishop on d3 because previously this bishop was targeting on h7. And after f4, g5, and you can see he basically wants to open the g file so that he can put his rook on g8. Okay, so as you can see now, white is threatening to give a check from a8 square. So to avoid this check, Carlsen moves his king to e7. And you can see, Carlsen will now bring his rook to g8 next so that he can mate, white on g2. So to stop that, white plays f4. He simply attacks the queen and force it to move. And after queen to h5, he brings his queen on g2, and basically he is defending the king. Now queen to g6, and then now there are multiple ways to continue this game. I mean, I know here some of you might be thinking of exchanging the queens, and guys, which is also fine because as you can see, since this h file is now open for the rook, but now white is just going to bring this king into the center by king to g2. And if knight to f6, king to g3, knight to h5 check, king to g2, knight to f6, h3. And if black tries to, break through by pushing d5, no need to exchange because this will also activates the black knight and also create some weakness. So that's why c5, no need to exchange. Just takes, rook to b8. And now you can see this rook is ready to, jump on b3, but white can counter with rook to a7, threatening to take on c7. And if rook to b2 check, king to f3, knight to e4. And basically now you can see what's coming next. So to stop this, bishop to e2. And I know some of you are thinking about taking on c7 with a check, but then simply in the next move in the next move this king will come on d8, and you can see this rook will also get into danger with the existing threat of rook to f2 check. Okay, so let's suppose if this game continues like this, as you can see, basically white completely blocks the file. So if knight to c3, then attacking the bishop, but simply bishop to f1. And now you can see this game will be completely equal for both. Okay, so let me go back. In the actual game, after queen to g6, rook to g1, but rook to g8, queen to f2. And as you can see, now white is targeting the queen, but simply queen takes g1 check, queen takes g1, rook takes g1 check, king takes g1, and after that, finally we get into the end game, and now comes c5. He wants to trade as many pieces as possible. D takes c5, d takes c5, b takes c5, knight takes c5. And now you can see it's not easy for white to infiltrate into the black position because of this c4 pawn, and black f5 pawn is also blocking the route. And since this bishop is targeted, so that's why he goes for bishop to c2. Okay, so now e5, a good move by Carlsen. He's asking for a pawn exchange, and if let's suppose white takes on e5 with a check, it will obviously going to benefit black because after d takes e5, as you can see, black controls all these powerful squares. So that's why after the move e5, white brings his king further on f3. And guys, now white goes for a clever move, bishop to a4. And since white king is, white king and pawn on f4 covers all the key squares. So as you can see, now bishop to b8 will be a mate. So to stop it, Carlsen goes for king to g6. Okay, so now knight to d2. He's preparing for knight to f3 so that he can target the h2 pawn. So that's why king to g2. He get closer to the pawn so that he can defend. Now knight to f3, king to g3, king to g6. And now guys, it's important for white to keep this bishop on this diagonal because as you can see, it's also defending the c4 pawn. But here, white makes a mistake with bishop to c6, leaving the c4 pawn undefended, and Carlsen immediately brings his knight to d2. He's now attacking the c4 pawn, and in the next move, he's going to, he's also threatening to give a check on f1, targeting the king and those important pawns. So after seeing all of this, here white decides to give up the c4 pawn and he goes for, king to f2. And after that, simply knight takes c4, king to e2, king to f6. And now, to and now if and yeah, so basically now to go to king to e6, basically he goes for bishop to d5 so that he can stop the king, but simply knight to b6, bishop to g8, knight to d7, king to d2, knight to c5. And now let's see how Carlsen converts this into a win. After king to c3, here black can go for this brilliant move knight to c6, which as you can see completely restricts the activity of this bishop. But instead, he goes for knight to d3. The idea is knight to e1, and then knight to f3. So to stop that, king to d2 is recommended, but white misses it, and he plays king to d4, which gives a chance to Carlsen, and he goes for the check. So king to d5, knight to c2, targeting this pawn chain. Targeting this chain. So king takes, knight takes e3, king to c5, knight to g2, king to d4, and in this position the final move by Carlsen is knight takes f4, and here Xiangzhi Bu resigned because clearly you can see now black is 2 pawns up, supported by the knight and the king. And let's say if this game continues like bishop to c4, if he tries to stop the pawns, but simply check, king to e3, king to e5, simply bishop to f1, f4 check, king to f2, f3, bishop to c4, knight to d4, bishop to a6. And you can see slowly, black is going to push the pawn, king to e1, knight to g3, bishop to d3, e2, takes, takes, because this is the only option, but h5, king to e3. And as you can see now, white has no piece left, so now he's forced to move the king, but simply f2, king to hg2, knight to f4 check, king to f1, knight takes h5, king to g2, and finally king to e2. And now you can see no one can stop this pawn from promotion. What a game, guys. What a end game by Magnus Carlsen. So, and that's why we all called him as God of the Chess. Like this video, and I will see you in the next one. This is your host, Bison, signing off. Bye bye.